Judge recognizes childhood friend on trial. What happens next will shock everyone. Judge Sophia Mitchell's heart stopped dead in her chest. The familiar face staring back at her from the defendant's table couldn't possibly be who she thought. But those eyes, those unmistakable hazel eyes that once sparkled with mischief under summer skies, belonged to only one person: Marcus Reynolds, the boy who'd been her best friend, her confidant, her first crush. Now he stood before her, shackled and worn, accused of armed robbery. The gavel trembled in her hand as their gazes locked, and for a split second, the bustling courtroom faded away. Have you ever faced a moment where your past and present collided so violently it left you breathless? Follow Judge Sophia Mitchell's impossible journey as she navigates the blurry line between justice and mercy when her childhood friend stands trial in her courtroom. The courtroom hummed with the usual pre-trial energy: attorneys shuffling papers, court reporters testing equipment, spectators whispering behind cupped hands. Sophia had presided over hundreds of arraignments in her 8 years on the bench. This Wednesday morning should have been no different. Docket number 47203, State versus Marcus Reynolds, called the bailiff, Thomas. Sophia straightened in her chair, adjusting her black robe as the defendant was led in. She glanced down at the charges: armed robbery, assault, resisting arrest, before looking up. And that's when her carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. Marcus Reynolds, 42 years old now, just like her. His once athletic frame had grown leaner, almost gaunt. The boyish charm that had convinced her to sneak out past curfew countless times was buried beneath lines of hardship and the shadow of a beard. But there was no mistaking him. Sophia gripped the edge of the bench, willing her expression to remain neutral as memories crashed through her professional facade. Biking along dusty back roads in Oak Ridge, swimming in Miller's Creek despite the no trespassing signs, sharing secrets under the massive oak tree in her backyard, the tree they'd carved their initials into at 13, promising to be friends forever. Forever had lasted exactly 4 more years. "Mr. Reynolds," she began. Relieved, her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "You are charged with armed robbery in the 1st degree, assault with a deadly weapon, and resisting arrest. How do you plead?" His eyes flickered with recognition, widening slightly before his gaze dropped to the floor. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The words were barely audible, his voice rougher than she remembered, like gravel underfoot. "Bail, Your Honor?" prompted the prosecutor, Abigail Warren, a sharp-dressed woman in her 30s with reputation for ruthless efficiency. Sophia paused, weighing her options. She should recuse herself immediately. There was no scenario where she could preside over this case ethically. Yet something, curiosity, perhaps, or a deeper need to understand what had happened to the boy who once knew all her secrets, held her tongue. "Bail is set at $100,000, she announced, her gavel striking with finality. Marcus's public defender, Rachel Connors, a young woman with determined eyes and an overflowing case file, stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client has ties to the community and limited financial resources. We request a reduction." "Denied," Sophia cut in, perhaps too quickly. "The severity of the charges warrants the amount. Trial is set for 3 weeks from today." As the bailiff led Marcus away, he glanced back over his shoulder. Their eyes met again, and Sophia saw something that haunted her for the rest of the day. A flicker of the old Marcus, the one who had once looked at her with complete trust. Back in her chambers, Sophia closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to react. Her hands trembled as she reached for the framed photo on her desk. Her law school graduation. Her life had been a steady climb upward since leaving Oak Ridge. Undergraduate at Vanderbilt, law school at Georgetown. A successful career as a prosecutor, before being appointed to the bench at the extraordinarily young age of 34. What path had Marcus taken that led him here, to her courtroom, facing charges that could put him away for decades? Her assistant, Vivian, knocked lightly before entering with a stack of files. "Judge Mitchell, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." In many ways she had. "I'm fine," Sophia lied, accepting the files. "Just a slight headache." Once alone again, she opened her laptop and did something she knew crossed an ethical line. She pulled up Marcus Reynolds' record. What she found told a story of a life unraveling, Minor drug possession at 22, theft at 25, a bar fight at 30, then a 5-year gap before another arrest for theft. His last arrest was 3 years ago. Until now. Nothing in his file explained how the bright, ambitious boy she'd known had ended up here. Marcus had been destined for greatness. The star quarterback with a sharp mind and sharper wit. The boy who tutored her through algebra while she helped him with English literature. The boy whose heart she'd broken. Summer 1999, the night before Sophia left for college. They stood beside Marcus's beat-up Chevy. The windows rolled down as Boys the Second Men played softly from the stereo. 17 years old, and balanced on the precipice of adulthood. You could still come with me, Sophia suggested, though they both knew it was impossible. Marcus's football scholarship to state had fallen through with his knee injury, and his family couldn't afford to send him anywhere else. Nah, he said with forced lightness. Someone's got to stay and keep this town interesting. The moonlight silvered his features as he reached for her hand. But hey, maybe next year, Marcus. She interrupted gently, pulling her hand away. We need to talk about this. His expression had shifted then, a subtle hardening around the eyes. He already knew what she was going to say. Nashville's just the beginning, she explained. After that, it's Georgetown. Then hopefully New York or D.C. I can't be looking backward, and I'm backward, right? His voice had gone quiet. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, Soph. He stepped away, hands shoved in his pockets. You've got your whole life mapped out, and there's no room for Oak Ridge. No room for me. We can still be friends, she offered weakly. Marcus laughed. The sound hollow. Right, friends. He opened his car door. Good luck out there, Sophia. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. She never saw him again. Until today. The bailiff's voice pulled Sophia from her memories. Judge Mitchell, the Davidson hearing is about to begin. She cleared her throat, closing Marcus's file. Thank you, Thomas. I'll be right there. For the rest of the day, Sophia moved through her docket on autopilot, her mind constantly circling back to Marcus. By evening, she had made her decision. Vivian, I need you to reassign the Reynolds case, she said, standing in her assistant's doorway. Judge Harmon should be able to take it. Vivian looked up, surprised. Any particular reason? Conflict of interest, Sophia replied simply. I know the defendant. What she didn't say was that she had spent the afternoon pulling strings. After court adjourned, she'd called her former colleague at the prosecutor's office, requesting access to the complete case file against Marcus. She'd also reached out to Rachel Connors, asking for a private meeting to discuss a matter related to one of her cases. Both were ethical breaches that could jeopardize her career if discovered. But Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she owed Marcus this much. At least, to understand what had happened to him before washing her hands of the situation entirely. We all have crossroads where our choices shape, not just our future, but the futures of those around us. Could you walk away from someone you once cared about when they needed you most, even if helping them might cost everything you've worked for? The coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse was quiet at 7 a.m. Sophia sat in a corner booth, dressed in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual power suit, feeling strangely vulnerable without the barrier of her judicial robes. Rachel Connors entered precisely on time, her worn leather briefcase clutched tightly. The young public defender looked nervous as she slid into the booth. I appreciate you meeting me, Miss Connors, Sophia began, pushing a coffee toward her. Rachel left it untouched. With all due respect, Judge Mitchell, this meeting is highly irregular. If the prosecution found out, they won't, Sophia assured her. And as of yesterday afternoon, I'm no longer presiding over your client's case. Rachel's posture relaxed slightly. May I ask why you wanted to see me? Sophia took a deep breath. Marcus Reynolds and I grew up together in Oak Ridge. We were close friends. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. I see. And you waited until now to recuse yourself because I needed to understand what I was dealing with first, Sophia admitted. Rachel hesitated, professional ethics warring with the opportunity to gain an influential ally. Finally, she opened her briefcase. The prosecution's case isn't as strong as they're pretending, she said, lowering her voice. The convenience store robbery was caught on security footage, but the quality is terrible. The perpetrator wore a hoodie that obscured most of their face. The store clerk's identification is shaky at best. He initially described someone shorter than Mr. Reynolds. Then why was Marcus arrested? He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, walking alone at night in a neighborhood where he doesn't live, roughly matching a vague description. The arresting officer found cash on him. But my client had just cashed his paycheck. No weapon was ever recovered. Sophia frowned. What does Marcus say happened? That he was walking home from his late shift at the warehouse, took a shortcut, and was stopped by police. He says they roughed him up when he questioned why he was being detained, and you believe him. Rachel met her gaze directly. I do. But I'm not sure it matters what I believe. The prosecution has a witness who claims they saw Mr. Reynolds discard something in an alley near the crime scene. If it was a weapon, Sophia nodded, understanding the implications. What about his history? How did he end up here? Rachel sighed. That's not really relevant to his defense. It is to me, Sophia interrupted. After a moment's hesitation, Rachel continued. He's had a difficult life. After high school, he worked a series of jobs while taking community college classes. Had some trouble with pain pills after a construction injury. Lost his mother to cancer about 10 years ago. Struggled with homelessness for a period. Each word felt like a personal indictment to Sophia. While she'd been collecting accolades and promotions, Marcus had been slowly sinking. He's been clean for 3 years, Rachel added. Has a steady job at the warehouse. Volunteers at a youth center on weekends. He's turned things around, which makes this arrest even more devastating. Sophia's coffee had grown cold. Thank you for sharing this with me. Rachel gathered her papers. Judge Mitchell, may I ask, why do you care? It was a long time ago. The question caught Sophia off guard. Why did she care? She'd moved on from Oak Ridge, from Marcus, from that whole chapter of her life. I'm not sure, she admitted. Maybe because I remember who he was before all of this. Rachel stood to leave, then paused. You know, he mentioned you once. When I asked if there was anyone who might serve as a character witness, Sophia looked up, surprised. What did he say? That there was a girl he knew in high school who always believed in justice more than anything, even when it hurt. Rachel adjusted her briefcase strap. I thought he was being poetic. I didn't realize he was talking about you. After Rachel left, Sophia remained in the booth, turning those words over in her mind. Had that been true? Had she valued abstract justice over the people in her life? Over Marcus? Her phone buzzed with a reminder. Her regular Tuesday lunch with District Attorney Charles Preston, a political ally and mentor. Perfect timing. If anyone could give her insight into the prosecution's case against Marcus, it would be Charles. The Reynolds case? Charles frowned over his martini at the upscale restaurant where they always met. At 62, with silver hair and impeccable suits, he projected authority without effort. Why the interest, Sophia? You recused yourself. Professional curiosity, she lied smoothly. The defendant grew up in my hometown. Charles studied her for a moment before shrugging. It's a solid case. Not airtight, but strong enough. Warren seems confident. I heard the identification is questionable, Sophia ventured. Perhaps, but the circumstantial evidence is compelling. And between us, he leaned forward. Reynolds has priors. Nothing violent, but enough to establish pattern. Juries eat that up. What about the prosecution's witness? The one who claims they saw Reynolds discard something. Charles raised an eyebrow. You've done your homework. Sophia maintained her composure. As I said, professional curiosity. Well, since you're curious, the witness is somewhat problematic. Has his own record, was initially reluctant to come forward. But his testimony places Reynolds in the right location with what appeared to be a weapon. Appeared to be. It was dark, Charles conceded. But Warren will make it work. She always does. Sophia pushed her salad around her plate. And if the defendant is actually innocent? Charles chuckled. Come now, Sophia. You've been a prosecutor. You know as well as I do that actually innocent is a rare creature indeed. He studied her expression. Is something bothering you about this case? No, she said quickly. Just thinking about the broader implications of our work sometimes. Charles nodded sagely. The burden we bear, making difficult calls to keep society safe. He signaled for the check. Speaking of difficult calls, the governor mentioned your name last week. The appellate court vacancy is opening up next year. Sophia's head snapped up. The appellate court had been her goal since law school. Really? Really? You're on the short list, my dear. Young, respected, with the right balance of compassion and firmness. He winked. Just keep your nose clean and your docket moving efficiently. The next year will be crucial for your candidacy. As they parted ways, Sophia felt the weight of his implied message. Stay focused. Don't rock the boat. Don't get involved in messy, controversial cases. Don't jeopardize everything you've worked for. But as she walked back to the courthouse, another thought emerged. What good was achieving her dream if it meant compromising the values that had drawn her to law in the first place? That evening, Sophia did something she hadn't done in years. She drove to Oak Ridge, an hour outside the city. The town had changed less than she expected. The same main street shops, though many had different names now. The high school football field where she'd cheered for Marcus every Friday night. The park where they'd spent countless summer days. She parked outside her childhood home, now occupied by strangers. The oak tree in the backyard was still there, larger than she remembered. Did it still bear their initials, she wondered. On impulse, she drove to Marcus's old neighborhood. The Reynolds small house looked run down, with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. A bungalow, a rent sign hung crooked in the window. As she sat in her car, staring at the empty house, Sophia finally acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding. She hadn't just left Oak Ridge behind, she'd abandoned Marcus when he needed her most. Not just romantically, but as a friend. She'd never called, never visited during breaks. She'd been so focused on becoming the person she thought she needed to be that she'd discarded the person she was. And now, fate had brought them full circle, giving her a chance to make a different choice. The pre-trial hearing for State v. Reynolds was scheduled for 9 a.m. in Courtroom B. Sophia slipped into the back row of the gallery, drawing curious glances from court personnel who recognized her. Judge Harmon, a methodical man in his 60s, presided where she should have been sitting. Marcus sat beside Rachel at the defense table, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the dark suits surrounding him. He looked tired, shoulders slumped forward as if bearing an invisible weight. The hearing proceeded routinely until Rachel stood to challenge the prosecution's key witness. Your Honor, the defense moves to exclude the testimony of Peter Dawkins, on grounds that his identification of my client is tainted by improper police suggestion and his own self-interest in providing testimony favorable to the state. Abigail Warren rose immediately. Your Honor, Mr. Dawkins is a citizen who came forward voluntarily, after being arrested himself, Rachel interjected, and mysteriously having his own charges reduced. Judge Harmon frowned. Miss Connors approached the bench with Ms. Warren. Sophia watched the attorneys engage in a heated whispered exchange. Judge Harmon appeared increasingly troubled as Rachel presented documents from her file. Finally, he addressed the courtroom. In light of new information regarding the potential witness tampering, this court will take a 1-hour recess to review the defense's motion. As the gallery began to empty, Sophia remained seated, watching Marcus. He hadn't noticed her yet. As if sensing her gaze, he suddenly turned, scanning the thinning crowd until their eyes met. Recognition flooded his features, followed by confusion and then wariness. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded once in acknowledgement before the bailiff led him away. That small gesture, the simple recognition of their shared past, solidified Sophia's resolve. During the recess, she made her way to the courthouse cafeteria, where she found Rachel sitting alone with case files spread across the table. Mind if I join you? Sophia asked. Rachel looked up, surprised. I didn't expect to see you here. I attended as an observer, Sophia said, sitting down. That was impressive work with the witness issue. Thank you. Rachel glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. But I'm not sure it'll be enough. Judge Harmon is fair, but conservative in his rulings. What if there was another way to approach this case? Sophia asked carefully. Rachel closed her file. I'm listening. I've been doing some research, Sophia began. The convenience store that was robbed has external security cameras that weren't included in the initial evidence gathering. Those cameras might show who actually committed the robbery. Rachel's eyes widened. How do you know this? I drove by the location, Sophia admitted. The cameras are visible from the street, but I don't see any mention of their footage in the discovery materials. That would be a Brady violation, Rachel murmured, referring to the legal requirement that prosecutors disclose potentially exculpatory evidence. But how would I even know what to request? The prosecution could claim they didn't know about additional footage. You'd need something more specific to compel discovery, Sophia agreed. Like the name of the security company and confirmation that the cameras were operational that night. Their eyes met in silent understanding. Judge Mitchell, Rachel said carefully, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Sophia replied evenly. I'm simply pointing out an avenue of investigation that might help an innocent man. Rachel nodded slowly. Hypothetically speaking, if someone were to provide me with that specific information, I could file a motion to compel the prosecution to obtain and review all security footage from that night. Hypothetically speaking, yes. Rachel gathered her files. Thank you for your observation, Judge. As Rachel walked away, Sophia recognized she had just crossed a line that could end her career. But for the first time since seeing Marcus in her courtroom, she felt like she was doing the right thing. That evening, Sophia made 2 phone calls. The first was to an investigator who had worked with her when she was a prosecutor, asking for a discreet favor involving security footage at a certain convenience store. The second was to the court clerk, requesting a copy of Marcus's bail hearing transcript. By morning, she had confirmation that the external security cameras had indeed been functioning on the night of the robbery, operated by Sentinel Security Services. She anonymously delivered this information to Rachel's office in an unmarked envelope. 3 days later, Rachel filed her motion to compel discovery of the additional security footage. Judge Harmon granted the motion over the prosecution's objections. The following week, charges against Marcus Reynolds were abruptly dropped. Sometimes justice isn't found in courtrooms or law books, but in the quiet moments where we choose courage over comfort. What would you risk to right a wrong you've witnessed? When is the price of doing nothing greater than the cost of taking action? Sophia sat in her office, staring at the official letter on her desk. The Judicial Ethics Committee requested her presence at a hearing regarding irregular conduct in the Reynolds case. Someone had talked, perhaps Charles, who had been suspiciously quiet since the charges were dropped, or maybe one of the courthouse staff who had seen her speaking with Rachel. Her judicial career was likely over. The ethics violations were clear and numerous. Even if she wasn't removed from the bench entirely, the appellate court position was certainly beyond reach now. Strangely, she felt relief more than regret. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Judge Mitchell? Vivian called. There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent. Sophia looked up to see Marcus standing in her doorway, dressed in clean jeans and a button-down shirt. Gone was the prison jumpsuit, the defeated posture. He looked more like the boy she remembered, the shadow of his former self still visible beneath the weathered exterior. May I come in? He asked. Vivian glanced between them uncertainly. It's all right, Sophia assured her. Thank you, Vivian. When they were alone, an awkward silence filled the room. 25 years of unspoken words hung between them. I heard what you did, Marcus finally said, remaining standing despite her gesture toward a chair. Helping my lawyer find that security footage. Sophia didn't deny it. How did you find out? Rachel isn't a good liar. A faint smile crossed his face. She tried to claim it was anonymous, but she kept looking at me strange when she mentioned it. I pushed, and she eventually told me. I see. Why did you do it? He asked, the question direct, unadorned. After all this time, Sophia considered her answer carefully, because it was the right thing to do. That's it. Disbelief colored his tone. You risked your career for the right thing, and because it was you? She admitted softly. Marcus finally sat down, his expression guarded. You didn't owe me anything, Sophia. Maybe not, but I owed it to myself. She gestured to the ethics committee letter. Though I may have overestimated my ability to stay under the radar. He leaned forward to read it, frowning. They're coming after you? For helping an innocent man? For improper judicial conduct? For interfering in a case I'd recused myself from. She shrugged. They're not wrong, technically. This is bull. Marcus caught himself. This isn't right. It's the system we have, Sophia said. Imperfect, but usually well-intentioned. Marcus laughed humorlessly. Tell that to the guys I've known who spent years locked up for things they didn't do. The system isn't just imperfect, Sophia. It's broken for people who look like me. The blunt truth of his words hit her hard. How many times had she told herself she was serving justice while turning a blind eye to the inequities built into the very foundation of her profession? You're right, she said simply. Her acknowledgement seemed to surprise him. So what now? You lose everything because you helped me? I don't know yet. But I wouldn't call it losing everything. Just readjusting my path. Marcus studied her, something like respect dawning in his expression. You've changed. Have I? The Sophia I knew would never have risked her perfect record for anyone. She smiled sadly. Maybe that's why I needed to do it. To prove I'm not that person anymore. She paused. What about you? What will you do now? Keep working at the warehouse. Keep volunteering with the kids at the center. His voice softened. One of them reminds me of you, actually. Brilliant girl. Wants to be a lawyer someday. Really? He nodded. I tell her about this friend I had who became a judge. How she always stood up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. That sounds like a rather idealized version of me. Maybe, Marcus conceded. Or maybe it's who you were always meant to be. They talked for nearly an hour, filling in the missing decades of their lives. Marcus told her about his struggles with addiction after a workplace injury, his grief when his mother died, the slow process of rebuilding his life. Sophia shared her own journey, the loneliness of achievement, her growing disillusionment with a system that sometimes seemed to value efficiency over fairness. As Marcus prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I forgave you a long time ago, for leaving, for not looking back. I'm not sure I deserve that forgiveness. It wasn't about what you deserved, he said gently. It was about what I needed to move forward. After he left, Sophia sat at her desk for a long time, reflecting on the strange, circular path that had brought them back into each other's lives. Then, she picked up the phone and called the chair of the Judicial Ethics Committee. This is Judge Mitchell, she said firmly. I'd like to move up my hearing to tomorrow if possible. And I'd like to request a public forum. The hearing room was packed. Judges, attorneys, reporters, and spectators, all gathered to witness what many expected to be Sophia's professional downfall. The 5-member ethics panel sat at a long table facing her, their expressions impassive. Sophia had declined representation, choosing to speak for herself. She stood tall in a simple gray suit, her judicial robes left behind in her office. Judge Mitchell, began the committee chair, you stand accused of multiple violations of judicial ethics, including improper interference in a case from which you had recused yourself, ex parte communications, and potentially obstructing justice. How do you respond? All eyes were on her as she stepped forward. I acknowledge my actions, she began, her voice steady. I did investigate aspects of the Reynolds case after recusing myself. I did share information with the defense counsel that led to the discovery of exculpatory evidence. I did these things knowingly, and I accept full responsibility for them. Murmurs rippled through the audience. However, she continued, I reject the characterization that I obstructed justice. On the contrary, my actions ensured that justice was served. The evidence I helped uncover proved that Marcus Reynolds was innocent of the crimes charged against him. That is not for you to determine, the chair interrupted sharply. We have processes in place, processes that failed, Sophia countered. Processes that would have sent an innocent man to prison because of overlooked evidence, an unreliable witness, and assumptions based more on appearance than fact. She paused, scanning the room. Her gaze settled on Marcus, sitting quietly in the back row. 25 years ago, I made a choice to pursue a career in law because I believed in justice. Somewhere along the way, I began to confuse justice with process. Following rules became more important than achieving fair outcomes. She straightened her shoulders. My actions in the Reynolds case were unorthodox and against protocol, but they were not against justice. Judge Mitchell, Another committee member spoke up. Do you realize the precedent this sets? If every judge took matters into their own hands when they personally disagreed with how a case was proceeding, I understand the concern. Sophia nodded. And I'm not suggesting that judges should regularly intervene in cases outside their jurisdiction. But I am suggesting that when we see clear injustice about to occur, we have a moral obligation that sometimes transcends our procedural obligation. The hearing continued for hours, with committee members questioning her extensively about each decision she'd made. Throughout, Sophia remained composed, neither defensive nor apologetic. She acknowledged her violations of procedure, while steadfastly defending the underlying principle that had driven her actions. By the time the committee adjourned to deliberate, the mood in the room had shifted from scandalized interest to thoughtful consideration. Many of her judicial colleagues watched her with new eyes, some with disapproval, others with quiet respect. As the crowd thinned, Charles Preston approached her. That was quite a performance, he said, his tone unreadable. It wasn't a performance, Charles. He studied her. You know your career is over, don't you? Even if they don't remove you from the bench, the appellate appointment is gone. I know. Was it worth it? He asked, genuinely curious. Throwing away everything for some childhood friend? Sophia looked past him to where Marcus stood waiting by the door. I didn't throw anything away, Charles. For the first time in years, I feel like I found something I lost. Charles followed her gaze, understanding dawning on his face. I see. He straightened his tie. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're making a mistake. But I also think you gave the most honest speech I've heard in this courthouse in 30 years. After Charles left, Marcus approached. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Yes, I did, Sophia replied. For both of us. 3 days later, the Ethics Committee delivered their ruling. Sophia Mitchell was suspended from the bench for 6 months and placed on probation for 2 years afterward. The punishment was less severe than many had expected, a fact several committee members later attributed to her unflinching honesty and the undeniable fact that her actions had prevented a miscarriage of justice. During her suspension, Sophia did something she'd been considering for years but never had the courage to pursue. She established a small nonprofit focused on reviewing potentially wrongful convictions, particularly in cases involving inadequate legal representation or questionable evidence. Marcus became one of her first volunteers, bringing a perspective she could never have gained on her own. His experiences navigating the system from the inside gave their work an authenticity and depth that quickly earned them respect from both defense attorneys and progressive prosecutors. When Sophia returned to the bench 6 months later, she brought with her a transformed understanding of her role. She became known for her thorough examinations of evidence, her insistence on procedural fairness for defendants regardless of background, and her willingness to question law enforcement testimony with the same rigor she applied to all witnesses. She never did receive that appellate court appointment, but as she often told the law students who now regularly observed her courtroom, some prices are worth paying when the reward is being able to face yourself in the mirror each morning. On a warm evening 1 year after the ethics hearing, Sophia and Marcus sat on the porch of his newly purchased small house. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. Not quite a rekindling of their teenage connection, but a deep friendship built on shared purpose and mutual respect. I got a letter today, Marcus said, passing her a slightly crumpled envelope. From that kid I mentioned, the one who wants to be a lawyer. Sophia opened it, smiling, as she read the earnest handwriting. Mr. Reynolds, I got into college. First one in my family. You were right when you said I could do it. Someday I'm going to be a judge like your friend who helped you. Thank you for believing in me. She handed it back, her heart full. You've made quite an impact on her life. Marcus shrugged, but his pride was evident. Just passing along what I learned from you. That justice isn't just about laws, it's about seeing people, really seeing them. As the sun set over the neighborhood, casting long shadows across the porch, Sophia reflected on the strange, circuitous journey that had brought them to this moment. 25 years ago, she'd left Oak Ridge believing justice was something found in courtrooms and law books. Now she understood it was something much simpler and far more profound. The courage to see the truth and act on it, regardless of the cost. In the end, Perhaps that was the lesson they had both needed to learn. Life often brings us full circle, challenging us to face our past choices and make new ones. What moments in your life have reconnected you with someone important from your past? How did it change you? Share your own story of reconciliation or recognition in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Heartwarming Stories Spark channel for more powerful stories that remind us of our shared humanity.